Welcome to my Talking Guitar podcast featuring John Hammond, talking about jazz guitar great Charlie Christian. In my view, Mr. Hammond was among the greatest talent scouts in the history of recorded music. During his decades with Columbia Records, he signed and/or worked with a who's who of musical artists, including many of my personal favorites, such as Bessie Smith, Benny Goodman, Billie Holiday, Teddy Wilson, Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, Bruce Springsteen, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. For fans of guitar music, one of Hammond's greatest accomplishments was arranging to have Charlie Christian join Benny Goodman's band in 1939. Playing alongside Goodman, Charlie demonstrated the potential of the electric guitar, which was still in its infancy. The following interview with John Hammond took place on November 4th, 1981, just a few minutes after I finished my phoner with his brother-in-law, Benny Goodman.
When you first heard about Charlie through Mary Lou Williams, were any jazz guitar players playing electrics?
Yeah, there were two. One was Leonard Ware in New York. And I had him on my first Spirituals to Swing concert in 1938. And, but unfortunately, the machine in which he was recorded had a wow in it, so we were never able to put those things out. He was very good, but he was not in Charlie's class. I mean, Charlie was an original. There's never been anybody like Charlie on guitar. He was a complete revolutionary. The other jazz guitar player was Floyd Smith, but he played a Hawaiian guitar, and Hawaiian guitar is bad enough, but amplified it was excruciating.
Oh yeah, it was too sharp.
Yeah.
How did you
and
come?
all those horrible Glissandi and the rest,
How did you come to meet Charlie?
Well, I flew out to Oklahoma City, and I was on my way to record Benny, in California. So, because of Mary Lou's enthusiasm, I had wired ahead to Oklahoma City to Charlie, just saying that I was coming, and I got there after the most excruciating trip because there were 10 stops of the little prop plane, from Chicago to Oklahoma City.
Oh boy!
And there was a whole band meeting me in an old, 1926 Buick, and we all piled into the car, and then I stayed at the hotel where Charlie's mother was a chambermaid, and I'll never forget the afternoon that I got there. I went over to the Ritz Cafe, and I heard Charlie, and I was completely knocked out, But the band was terrible. Charlie was the only really talented guy in the band. And so I had a terrible crisis of conscience then, because I knew Charlie was the whole guts of the band, but Charlie was only making $2.50 a night, 3 nights a week.
Oh my!
But I had a terrible amount of arm twisting to do with Benny to bring Charlie from Oklahoma City to California. But luckily, Benny was on the old Gold Hour at that time, radio, and they had a couple of $100 budget for guests, you see. So I said, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you charge the expenses to Old Gold? So Benny said, all right, John, if you say so. And he arrived the date of my first Columbia session with Benny in 1939. This was, I would say, I think it was August of 1939. And he arrived at the studio, when we were doing Swinging the Dream and Dawn That Dream and a couple of other things on that very first Goodman session. And Benny didn't have time to, listen to it properly in the studio. So Artie Bernstein, Benny was opening that night at the Victor Hugo restaurant. This is all in my book. I don't know if you ever read my book.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, but I mean that's all in the book. You know, I like to repeat myself too much, but we snaked Charlie in through the kitchen, and while Benny was having dinner in the break between the dinner session and the regular session, and just before the show, which was the trio and the quartet with Lionel Hampton and Fletcher Henderson and then my friend Artie Bernstein and Nick Patul on drums. Mm-hmm. We set up the amplifier on the bandstand. Luckily, there was an electrical outlet there. Mm-hmm. And poor Benny got back to the stand and saw Charlie Christian there, and he just had a fit. And he beat off the Rose Room. I think he figured maybe Charlie wouldn't know Rose Room. And if Charlie didn't know Rose Room, you'd never guess it, because 47 minutes later, because that's how long Rose Room lasted. I mean, Charlie was. I think probably that was probably the most explosive session I ever heard with Benny's group. I had a few friends who were standing at the bar and the rest, you know, and they came through, and the audience just went crazy. And Charlie was signed, and from $2.50 from $7.50 a week, Charlie suddenly made $150 a week with Benny.
Wow, what a change!
And of course, the thing that's fantastic is that Saturday night was the night of the broadcast, and that was the night that Charlie set the riff for Flying Home.
Oh.
And that's really Charlie's tune, despite the fact that Benny and Lionel cut in on it. And that was, you know, that was the start of the sextet. And then we had to wait until we got to New York to record the sextet. But we recorded the sextet about a month later.
What was Charlie like as a guy?
Well, he was wonderful. He was, you know, pretty naive. I tried to describe how he was dressed in the book, you know.
Sort of a cowboyish?
He had very narrow shoes, which pinched.
What a dude.
But he looked very sharp. He had a purple shirt, I remember, and a strange kind of tie, and he looked like a yokel, but he was a lovely guy, and of course this was probably the culmination of Charlie's life, those 2 years that he was with Benny, because not only did he play in the sextet, but for a while he also played in the band. And the rhythm section of Benny's band at that time was just unbelievable. I mean, the following year, Mel Powell was on piano, Big Sid Catlett was the drummer, John Simmons was a marvelous bass player, and Charlie.
How did Charlie's playing change during those 2 years?
Not too much. It was already developed by that time.
Who were his? Did he ever mention who his influences were?
No, Charlie started as a bass player.
Pardon me?
Charlie started as a bass player. So I think Walter Page was one of the big influences in Charlie's life. And I don't know who his guitar influences could have been, because there were no other known electric guitar players at that time. Charlie was an original.
So how quickly did he have an impact on other players?
I'd say
other guitarists.
The week the first records came out.
Oh, really?
Well, he just revolutionized everything.
How popular was he during his lifetime?
Enormously so.
He became like
won the Metronome Award. I remember, as the best guitar player, he just had a fantastic impact among musicians, particularly, and also among the public, because in his own little way, he was a fantastic showman, without ever vying for it. He just had it.
Was he flamboyant?
Not at all.
Not at all?
He was about as flamboyant as Lester Young, which means not very flamboyant.
Yeah. What was Charlie's role in pioneering bebop?
He used to, one of the reasons he died when he did, I think, was because he had TB, which we didn't find out until Benny got to Chicago. And he was coughing, and Benny sent him to the Michael Reese Hospital. And that was when they found out that Charlie had already had TB.
Mm-hmm.
And he was warned by the doctors there to be terribly careful and not to smoke. And to get his rest. But he got to New York, and there was never any rest. He stayed, he played with the band. They were at the New Yorker Hotel at the time. And then afterwards, he would hang out at Minton's, up in Harlem on 118th Street and 7th Avenue. And he was up there all night. And at the same time, this is where Dizzy used to hang out up there. I think Charlie came later. Came a year or so later. But anyway, I would say that the real architects of bebop were probably Charlie Parker, Charlie Christian, and Dizzy Gillespie.
When was the last time you saw Charlie?
I saw Charlie about 3 or 4 days before he died out at Mayview Hospital. No, excuse me. Out at the hospital, Seaview Hospital in Staten Island. That's where Charlie died. And I fortunately his trained nurse out there was a good friend of mine, and I was this was in the spring of 1942, and I was at my family's house for dinner. I'll never forget. And the nurse called me and said, please, that she didn't think that Charlie would last even a couple of more days, and asked me please to get in touch with Benny and have Benny send some kind of a wire, or send some fruit or something, to assure him how much Benny still loved him. I don't know whether Benny ever did or not. I have a feeling maybe he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But Charlie died within a couple of days,
Uh-huh.
and then his funeral was up at I think it was at the Mother's AME, the Mother Zion Church on 137th Street in New York City, and then we shipped the body to Oklahoma City.
Oh, I see.
I made all the funeral arrangements. I remember.
Did many people come to the funeral?
Not too many. No.
Well,
Some did. Sickness and death is a terrible hang-up for musicians, and I don't think Benny was there, but I don't think too many people were there.
40 years.
This is nearly 40 years ago, so it's hard for me to remember exactly how many were there, but not enough.
Do you think Charlie's significance to jazz remains undiminished 40 years later?
Undiminished. There's never been the two great guitar players in jazz for my dough were Eddie Lang and Charlie Christian. And they couldn't have been more different, but they were both complete originals.
Well, that covers what I'm looking for, Mr. Hammond.
All right, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks a lot.
All right, fine. When will this be coming out?
This is going to be a cover story in March.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because
I'm
it's
so
the
glad
40th.
I got you in time.
It's the 40th anniversary of his death.
Yeah, that's
And,
right. Yeah, it will be exactly that because he died in February. That's right.
For more insights into Charlie Christian, I invite you to check out my podcast with Benny Goodman and Barney Kessel. Transcriptions of all three of these interviews were published in the March 1982 issue of Guitar Player magazine. Before signing off, I want to thank my producer, Nick Hunt. If you like what we're doing with Talking Guitar and a YouTube channel, you can put a smile on our faces and send some cheer our way by clicking that donate button. This podcast is copyright 2023 by Jazz Obrecht, all rights reserved. Thanks for listening.